Hi guys, and welcome back. In the last video, we went ahead and we logged into our cloud vendor, AWS, and we set up 3 Linux virtual machines on Ubuntu Linux so that we can set up our etcd cluster, and we just gave them each a unique name here. Now we need to actually set the host name on the operating system for each of these, and that'll be the first step in configuring them for etcd. So I'm going to fire up my terminal here. Let me just maximize that here. And I'm going to SSH into each of these Ubuntu virtual machines. And I'm also going to set an option here called server alive interval equals 60, just to ensure that my connections are reliable here. So we'll confirm the host fingerprint. And of course, I need to specify my SSH key as well, because I created a custom one. I'll go ahead and find downloads, and then we'll do etcd-keypair.pem, and we'll go ahead and hit enter. And that should give us access to that VM. All right, so what you can see is we're logged in now, and we just want to change this host name here from the IP address name to an actual host name that we can recognize. I'm going to do sudo vim etc hostname, and we'll delete that line and just plug in etcd01, and we'll save that file, and we'll just do a sudo reboot. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the other nodes here. So I'm going to fire up another pane here in my Windows terminal. I'm actually going to do one more down here, so we have 3 of them available to us. And in the second one, I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing, where I do ssh-i downloads etcd-pem ubuntu at, and now we need to grab the node number 2 here, grab its IPv4 address, and paste that in, confirm the host key, and then we'll go ahead and do sudo vim etc hostname. Oops, let's find hostname there. And we'll do etcd02, save, and reboot. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the third node down here. So sudo, or actually ssh-i, and we're going to grab the IPv4 address here. We'll find our key pair, and we'll do ubuntu at IP address, confirm the host key. That's just something we need to do once for each VM. And then we'll do sudo vim etc hostname, and we'll say etcd03. And then reboot him. Awesome. So now each of these nodes should have a fresh hostname on them. Let's SSH into the first one. Sure enough, you can see its hostname has been changed here. And then we'll do the second one here. So we'll get SSH'd into the second one, and you can see its hostname has been changed as well. And then once this third one comes back online, we should have etcd03 there. So once we've changed the host name on each of these virtual machines, we can go ahead and start to install the necessary software components on each of them. So I'm going to head down to the documentation here for Kubernetes, and I'm going to just open up a new tab with the installing kubeadm documentation. And one of the first things that we're going to need to do is to install a container runtime. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and just install the Docker daemon on all of these. So let's do a sudo apt update and sudo apt install docker.io. And then we'll do -- yes. And I'm going to go ahead and just copy that to my clipboard, so we can run that. And then we'll do that on the second node as well as the third node. So after that's done, all 3 of these nodes should have the Docker runtime installed. And that should also install containerd as a dependency as well. Once we've done that, we can go ahead and move on to installing kubeadm and kubelet. And we don't need to worry about installing kubectl as we previously discussed. So go ahead and just copy the commands down here to configure the apt package manager on each of these virtual machines. So on the first one, I'll go ahead and run the dependency install. We'll do the same thing on the second node here as well, and the third one. And then once we've done that, we just want to download the Google Cloud Public Signing Key, the GPG key for it, to validate any packages that we are getting from it. And then we also want to add in the apt repository. So let's go ahead and run this command on each of our nodes here. That'll configure the apt repository for Kubernetes, so we can install things like kubelet and the kubeadm utility. And then finally at the end here, we can just do another sudo apt update because we've changed our apt repository to look at another endpoint, which is that repository that we just added in. And then once we've done that, we can go ahead and run this command to actually install kubelet and kubeadm. And I'm just going to leave off kubectl at the end here because we don't need that to run an etcd cluster. So we'll go ahead and do this, and I'm going to tack on the --yes just so that it runs without confirmation. So we'll copy that onto all of our virtual machines here. And then all of the VMs at this point should have the kubeadm installed as well as the kubelet service. And to confirm that, one thing that you can do is just use systemctl. So on etcd01 node, I'll do sudo systemctl status kubelet. And as you can see, it is installed, but it's going to be just in a permanently crashing state at the moment until we actually configure it. So we'll go ahead and just ignore that. And then on etcd02, do sudo systemctl status kubelet. And once again, you can see it's just in a crashing state, which is fine, but at least it's installed. And then on the third node down here, we'll go ahead and do the same thing. And it looks like kubelet has been installed. You could also just run kubeadm here as well on these nodes just to make sure that that command is actually discoverable on each of them. And it looks like it is. So now that we've got those base components installed onto our systems for our cluster, we should be able to move on to the next steps in setting up our etcd cluster. And that's going to start out with configuring kubelet to make sure that it starts up properly. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.